Hi and welcome to this second video in the series about analysis of movements, and today we're going to be looking at some more examples of motions and movements. And so jumping is the next example, and this occurs through the sagittal plane, and again this goes around the transverse axis. And so the joints involved in jumping are the ones at the hip, which is a ball and socket, the knee, which is a hinge, and the ankle, which acts like a hinge. And so if we look at an example of jumping, obviously the hip at this point is an extension because the angle between the upper body and the lower leg is nearly 180 degrees, so we say it's an extension, and the muscle involved, or the agonist involved there, is the gluteals. The antagonist in that case would be the hip flexor. The knee is an extension because it's fully straightened out, and therefore the muscle that's the major agonist there that's contracting, causing the straightening of the knee, is the quadriceps. The one that's relaxed to that point, so the antagonist, that will be the hamstrings. And you can see here that the toes are pointed at the bottom, and so the ankle is undergoing plantar flexion, and the agonist in this case is the gastrocnemius, and obviously the antagonist is the anterior tibialis at this point. Again, the majority of the muscles here are undergoing isotonic contractions, and in most cases, or in virtually every case here, they're undergoing concentric contractions, so they're shortening. So the quadriceps, the gluteals and the gastrocnemius are all shortening at this point, so they're undergoing concentric contractions. The next example is kicking, and this can be broken down into two sections, but again this occurs through the sagittal plane, and it pivots around the transverse axis. And again we've got the same joints that are being used here, so hip, knee and ankle. Now when kicking we can undergo through two phases. We've got the preparatory phase, and that first phase is, you can see here, when the leg is brought back before the ball is being kicked. And so again the angle between the upper body up here and the lower leg, and the upper leg here, sorry, that angle is quite big, and therefore the hip is in hyperextension, and the agonist therefore is the gluteals, and so the antagonist will be the hip flexor. The knee, you can see, is bent, and so the angle between the lower and upper leg is quite small, so it's in flexion. The agonist for this is the hamstring, and therefore the antagonist will be the quadricep. And the ankle, you can see at this point, is undergoing plantar flexion because it's pointing backwards, or basically the heel is being raised in preparation to kick the ball, and the agonist at this point will be the gastrocnemius. Now that's the preparatory phase. The one after that will be the actual kicking phase. Now looking at this individual here, what's happening here is hip now, because the leg has come through, you can see here that this angle is shortening, and so the hip is in flexion, and the agonist for this is the hip flexor. So at this point, when the hip flexors are essentially contracting and undergoing isotonic contraction, therefore the other muscle, the gluteals, so the antagonist at this point, is relaxing. The knee is in extension, and again you can see here that the quadricep is quite pronounced, and so that's undergoing an isotonic contraction. The antagonist, the hamstrings, are relaxed at this point. Now the ankle here, it depends when the ball is being kicked. Just before the ball is being kicked, you would expect the ankle to be in plantar flexion, so pointing downwards, and the muscle responsible for that is the gastrocnemius. After the follow through, you can see here that the toe is beginning to be pointed, so depending on what point the diagram might be given in a question, if the toes are pointing upwards, that's undergoing dorsiflexion, and therefore that's the anterior tibialis that's responsible for that.